The fundamental philosophies and principles of the organization have stayed consistent since the start. It's about the membership. It's about us facilitating training that's going to raise the bar for the profession as a whole, facilitate that learning and that growth for people in the profession that are interested in what can we do to do a better job to prepare our people for the complexities and the challenges of the profession that they're in. We're an association that's committed to trainers and to training that also happens to run a world-class conference.
We have an entirely packed schedule over the course of a week. Every night at ILEETA is designed to get trainers to connect to each other and to the industries that support training and law enforcement.
And the environment here, and Ed was very intentional about creating this culture where it's a culture of peers. It should be on your bucket list of things to come. Once you've been here once, then you'll understand what all the buzz is about.
ILEETA is more than a conference.
It's not just sharing of academic theories, it's practical application for that research and that information. It's important to have a connection with like-minded people who are going through the same struggles, have been through the same struggles, knowing that you're not alone and that you have people that you can reach out to is something that a lot of trainers need.
This conference will always be the cornerstone. This conference will always be the pilgrimage that trainers take every year to find one another.
So just that connection is a critical component and an important piece of being part of this community of trainers, which is what it is.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of ILEETA Live, July 2026. Man, the year is halfway over. Holy cow. Can you believe it? We are 250 days out from that ILEETA conference. And that intro video just gets me pumped and excited to, man, I just want to be in St. Louis again. How about you, Todd?
Oh man, it's exciting. I can't wait. I take this time after the conference. It's like the first 6 months after the conference. It just kind of decompress, go over my notes, kind of put my action plans into work. Try not to do it all at once because when I do, I feel overwhelmed, and if I don't, I feel like I'm procrastinating. But trying to kind of take that 6 months to put things into play, and then come September, that's when I start really looking forward to the next conference. So
I'm looking forward to it now. Alexandra, how about you?
Well, Brian, I have to say that it looks like you haven't left St. Louis. Just saying.
Still.
I'm still here mentally. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. ILEETA is, I think about it all year long in the sense that there's so much that goes on that week that it's like drinking from the fire hose in a good way. There's a lot to process, and it just takes time. It takes time after the conference to figure out, okay, what just happened and what did I just see? And then to take even more time to figure out how does that fit in with your craft and what you're trying to do and how you want to help push things forward, whether it's in your own, development or how we're going to help others develop, which is kind of where I'm focused right now. So how do I take what I learned and try to transmit it to, the people who are coming up behind me? So Todd's timeline is pretty solid. About this time of year, it's like, okay, let's get our course proposal together and see how we can participate in the next version of, what's to come next year, the next version of our conference.
Looking forward to seeing what's going to be new at the ILEETA 2027 conference. It's going to be powerful. We have a powerful guest lined up to talk to tonight, Michael Warren, who has 1 or 2 years in law enforcement and maybe a couple more than that. But we'll get to him in just a bit. I just want to get that teaser out there that you've all came here to listen to him, but we want to get the some really good news out to you guys. ILEETA has a new website that I think is almost getting ready to launch. Todd, you've seen that, haven't you?
I have. Yeah, I got to play around with it a little bit, and I really like it. I think it's a lot easier to navigate. It's a lot cleaner look, a lot more user friendly. I think people are going to really like it.
I do too. It seems a little more speedier when you're navigating from a page to page to another link, and I believe that it's going to launch this weekend. So stay tuned for that. I'm pretty excited. It's we've had the same website for many years, and we continue to evolve at ILEETA, and that's what is making this organization so wonderful and so great. Is evolution is here. So that website is going to be powerful, and check your email probably Saturday, Sunday, and jump on that website. And you may have to register. I'm not sure about that. Do you know, Todd?
Yeah, you go in there and you can update your profile, and it's super easy to do. And I know exactly why Joe had me as part of the test dummies, because when it comes to tech stuff, I am a dummy, and if anybody can screw it up, it's probably me. And so even I was able to go in there and update my profile and put my photo in there and my bio and all of those cool things. Even got a chance to play with some of the functionality of it. There's a lot of resources available in there that I think people are going to find very useful. A lot of information to glean as a place to go if you're looking for information, whether it's about ILEETA or past classes, or if you're doing research on a topic, it's a good place to go and check out.
No, absolutely. One of the things that really impressed me was the ILEETA journal resource. It's easier to navigate and find previous ILEETA journals from years past. So those that have struggled with looking for a certain article or journal, it's going to be a lot easier. So speaking of the journal, the spring journal is out. There's some outstanding articles. I think the one that just hit today was about a new member or a new attendee at the conference that has nothing but great things to say about the conference. So check that out if you haven't looked at the ILEETA journal yet. It's got some wonderful articles. Todd, do you know anything about the technology advisory group?
I know that Long Bartel is kind of leading that charge. What they've got going and where they're going and what they're planning on doing, that I don't know. But I think that it's one of those ways that members can be involved. And I know that things like the technology group and some other things are in the works. So if you're looking to be more involved in ILEETA, there's more opportunities coming up. So it's not just a conference. We want to be a year-round resource for everybody, and there's different ways to get involved coming up that you need to check out and be involved in.
Absolutely. I'm pretty excited about that technology group because, like Todd, I'm kind of not that great with technology, learning every day. So I can't wait to learn from Lon and all those folks that's going to be on part of that group.
Yeah.
Well, I think I don't have any more updates. Do you guys have any updates?
Well, we had a perfect opportunity to segue into the fact that people need to start getting their classes in. And I think, Brian, you're the perfect person to encourage people to not procrastinate till the very last minute to get their classes in.
Well, Todd, you're right. Every year I wait till the last minute because I'm never satisfied. It's just like teaching at the ILEETA class. Or a conference. I'm never satisfied with my presentation, and I'm always changing stuff up to the last minute. So my goal is to get my proposal in before October 31st. But hey, the proposals are open now until October 31st to get a class to teach for ILEETA 2027. So you have plenty of time to do that. If you need some help thinking of a topic or need some encouragement, any of us on this podcast, Alexandria, Todd, Michael, myself, Joe, we can give you some coaching and guidance of what some topics that may be of interest for you to teach at the conference. So We're
And
looking
we
forward
won't
to it.
call out any other procrastinators, Kim, or Billy, or anybody else that waits till the last minute. We're not going to do that. We don't want to call you out or embarrass you. Just get your stuff done.
Absolutely. Well, hey, our members didn't want to listen to us go back and forth. We gave some good information and updates on ILEETA, but they're here to listen to our guest, Michael Warren. And Michael, I think everybody knows you. You've been around the block once or twice, but for those that don't know who you are, give us a Reader's Digest version of who Michael Warren is.
Michael Warren is a retired police officer out of the state of Michigan, longtime ILEETA member, presenter. I now am the CEO for Command Presence Training. And as I like to say, Michael Warren is really high on the dork spectrum. So that's kind of where we're at.
Oh, all right. We are honored to have you. And I had thought we'd had you on the ILEETA Live before, but I guess we haven't. That was an oversight.
That was a hacking incident. Just
you know what I'm thinking of is you had a podcast, a different podcast at one of the ILEETA conferences.
Yep.
And we talked there, and so that's probably what I was thinking about. We had some fun talking on that podcast.
absolutely.
It's Between the Lines or something like that.
That's correct.
So, hey, I had a first question ready to roll off, but Todd and myself been talking, and Alexandra, you haven't said much. We haven't gave you the mic to talk, so I want to throw it over to you for the first comment question you have for Michael.
Oh boy. Well,
Well,
it's a good thing I came prepared. So
Does that?
I know that, I mean, between the four of us, we probably have, I don't know, something like 200 years of training experience and law enforcement experience and all those kinds of things. I'm looking at you, Todd. And I've been thinking a lot about legacy, especially as I described, I've retired in the last year, and it doesn't mean I'm not doing teaching or anything like that, but we're leaving one thing to sort of create another. And I'm probably the single person here who doesn't know Michael that well. And I'm curious about, I know Command Presence is doing a lot of great work training out there. And then with your background, Michael, I recently read an interesting article about echo chambers and how it's been a concern of mine, and I think probably of all of us as trainers, how information seems to get passed around, and maybe it's not the most accurate information out there, or maybe it's not what we want our people to be learning, but because we heard it somewhere from somebody before, we assume it's true and we move forward with it. And I think this also goes to creating legacy and how we go forward and how we are creating the future, for the people who are coming up behind us. And I'm curious about your thoughts about how we, I'm not sure if prevention is the right word, but how we look at that issue, either as new instructors or current instructors, and what are reasonable ways that you have either found or you might suggest that people can get out of that, just get out of that trap, basically.
Okay, well, it's interesting that you bring this up, because I believe it's one of the most damaging thing that goes on in our profession right now, especially on the training side of things. We grab a hold of an idea, and all of a sudden we have a curriculum and a policy and a mandate based upon something that we're not really sure, does it actually work? And I was talking to Brian before we came on. I'm doing my book notes from a book, Admiral McCraven, Conquering Crisis. And I love the terminology that he talked about in there. When Apollo 13, when things went catastrophically wrong, the people on Earth were attacking and reattacking the problem until they found a solution. And I just thought that terminology was so good. I think that we as professionals have to attack that which we're being presented with. We can't just have slide deep knowledge about something that we heard about and we turn around and put it into a presentation. I believe that from a legacy perspective, one of the greatest things that a leader and or a trainer can provide is credibility and defensibility. And credibility comes about through research, not just in a domain that has police or tactical in front of it, but in domains outside of this profession, and bringing it in and attacking it and reattacking it. Does it fit here? How does it fit in here? And defensibility, I'm a big believer in the power of words. And one of the phrases that I really don't like is officer survival, because in my opinion, surviving isn't enough. And defensibility allows us to go beyond survivability, because we have to survive not only the event itself, but also the internal investigation, and perhaps a criminal investigation, and there might be a civil court case, there might be a criminal court case. All of those things have to be accomplished, and that is what we as leaders and or trainers can provide, if we provide stuff that is both credible and defensible.
So it sounds to me like an important part of this is perhaps creating good feedback loops. And I've found over the course of my career in law enforcement that we might not be the best at, I don't know, taking other people's suggestions. And not that we should listen to everybody, because that's a whole nother issue,
Right.
you know, but learning how to create good feedback loops with people who you trust to give you good critical feedback. And do you have any thoughts on either creating those loops, or how you've done that in the past, or how somebody who's not used to that can start doing that process? You know, like, what should they look for?
We have a class called the Transitional Leader, and it's designed for people in an organization that have people below them, beside them, and above them in the organizational chart. And we have a whole module on feedback. And in most leadership classes, it focuses on delivering feedback. And ours is on delivering feedback, but also in receiving feedback. And it's probably one of the hardest things to do, because it requires you to be incredibly vulnerable to people that you are leading, that you're being led by, that you're leading beside. And so I think that if we started early on and we made it part of our culture, hey, how did that go? How did I do? What are my blind spots? And I think one of the most important things that we as leaders have to establish, we as trainers have to establish, is our why behind the feedback. Oftentimes people see feedback as an opportunity to point out that which has been done wrong. And instead, we should approach it with the why of, this is a way that we can improve so that all of us are better off as a result of it. And I think one of the things, and I struggle with this, I struggle with it now, I struggle with it while I was active. We oftentimes, because we have to deliver feedback, we try to rush through it, especially if it's a difficult conversation, right? And we just want to get done with it so we can mark it off our list and say, okay, I did it. I did the hard thing, right? And I think yes. But I think we have to start making it normal to allow the pause. Where we as leaders, we say, hey, you know what? I've delivered a lot to you today, and I know this is probably hard for you to take. So why don't you take 30 minutes or take an hour, or even, you know what? I want you to think about this, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, because I don't want either one of us to say something that we're going to regret, because this has to add value. But then I think we have to turn around. We have to model that when we get something bad that we don't like from a subordinate or from a leader, someone above us saying, hey, you know, you're giving me a lot to think about it. And so give me a little bit of time to digest this so that we can make this a productive session rather than just a session I can check off my list.
Absolutely. I love how you brought up modeling. And it's something I try to talk about in the instructor classes that I teach, even in the non-instructor ones, but modeling the behaviors that we want to see in other people. Because I think we lose track of that a little bit, especially in the wellness realm, where it's about a lot of do as I say, not as I do kind of stuff. And it's something that I'm seeing it getting a little better in the profession, but I think it comes from us as instructors. The leadership portion of it, that is a strong layer in our profession that can really kind of push that forward, you know, show people what you want them to do. As I know we're talking a little bit about legacy, but as new instructors come into ILEETA, because we mentioned the article from the person who just, you know, came to ILEETA and loved it, and how we're developing new instructors. Do you have any suggestions for how new instructors can learn to do that? Can find that space in themselves to be able to, have the bravery to be that vulnerable to model the behaviors that they want.
What a couple things there that you brought up I thought were really important. Modeling. I don't know what the rest of your experiences are, but it has been my experience that some of the worst students in classes that I teach are other trainers or people who are in positions of authority. We have trainers that come into class and they behave with exactly the same behaviors that they hate when people exhibit them in their class. I think that we need to first, as instructors, be exemplary students. And if we can be exemplary students, then we're already starting that legacy process. And I have to, when you talk about someone new coming to ILEETA, one of the most valuable things that I think a new instructor can learn at the ILEETA conference is it's okay and acceptable and desirable to be excited about law enforcement training. It doesn't have to be something that is boring. Listen, you can geek out about it. It's okay. And in fact, that's what we want, because when somebody's passionate about something, when they find that right there and they look around at the conference, they go, oh man, I've seen that guy's article. You know what? I took a class from that girl over there, and look how excited they are going to a class. And so that legacy of true lifelong learning is one of those things. Now, lifelong learning is almost impossible if you're unwilling to be vulnerable. And vulnerability looks different in different ways. Asking people for feedback is certainly one of them, but signing yourself up for a class in an area where you're supposed to be a SME, you're a subject matter expert, and say, you know what, there's still stuff for me to learn. And then going to that class and being the exemplary student, taking notes. Todd talked about how he digests, you've got to go through this time of digesting notes and everything. Yeah, when you hear somebody of that stature, that's vulnerable right there, because he found so much value in those classes that he went to that he's still digesting it. And so I think that's a way that we can get new people coming into this. Number one, it's okay to be excited. Be excited. Please be excited. And then watching how other people learn, I think that's how we set those folks up for success.
100%.
I got a question that kind of dovetails into with what Sasha was talking about. You mentioned culture, you mentioned mentoring, you mentioned leadership. One of the things that I've seen in our profession, whether it's in traditional law enforcement, the county, the cities, the state highway patrols, whether it's corrections, parole and probation, you name it, dispatch. One of the things I see is that we don't really establish a culture of mentoring, of leadership, until somebody is in a position of leadership. We select somebody as an FTO, and then all of a sudden we're going to send them to a class on teaching and mentoring others. We select somebody as a sergeant. They go through this promotional process. They put stripes on their sleeves, and then we just hope to God they don't screw it up in a leadership position, as opposed to creating a culture that goes right back to our hiring processes, creating a culture of leadership, of mentoring, looking for those values in our candidates, looking for those values in our academies, like an academy culture of leadership, of mentoring. What is it that we can do as trainers to start to change that culture, to make a difference earlier on, and instead of kind of changing their minds halfway through their career, that we set that anchor point early in their career, an expectation of mentoring, of leadership, of learning, of feedback loops, these types of thought processes.
So the earlier, the gooder, right? I mean, the earlier we start that stuff, the better off we are as a profession and as an organization. And so a couple things there. One of my favorite books is Upstream, and it was written by one of the Heath brothers. And it's kind of along the same lines of Left of Bang, but it talks about the further upstream we get in dealing with problems, the less emergent they become. And so if you go and you look, most agencies, when they have a hiring panel, if you will, we typically pick the people who happen to be available at the time that we're running it. There's very little thought process that goes into who's sitting on that initial hiring panel. Yeah, we need professionals doing that. And and here's just some. Have we ever sat and looked and said, hey, you know what? The people that we've hired on, who's been successful and who hasn't? Okay. And then we go back and say, okay, well, who recommended those folks and who said we shouldn't hire them? And I bet we find that there's a group of people in our organization that are really bad at picking people to come and work in our organizations. When you talk about that, I think if we did a better job on the hiring part, not just do I like this person, but is this person going to be a fit for this organization? And Brian, dude, I hate to say this, man, but I think the Marine Corps does it better than anybody else. They start leadership training at the very beginning. The expectation is that everybody's going to be a leader. And we look for opportunities to allow them to lead. And we don't allow them to drown, but we do allow them to get in the water. And we allow them to get a little bit deep in the water, but not to a point where it's going to be catastrophic. And so if we can do a better job of getting the right people in, and then we do a better job up front. And so I'm going to have to give a shout out to my partner, Paul Biesinger. Paul was the primary author to our FTO program. And our belief in our FTO program is that you coach, you teach, and then you evaluate. We front load the learning because people are more likely to lead when they're competent and they're confident in what they're doing. And so we have, I've been to several FTO programs throughout my career. And it has been my experience that most of them focus on how to evaluate rather than how to train. And if all I do is evaluate, we're actually disincentivizing them taking leadership when they have the ability to do so. So if we front load them for success, and so I'm going to throw a question back to the panel here, because mentoring, I think, is one of the most underutilized tools in our profession. But I can argue both sides of the argument. Should it be a formalized program where the agency assigns somebody, or should it just develop naturally? Because the problem is if you don't assign and it happens naturally, you might get a mentor that you don't want them out there mentoring people. You know what I mean? But it's I can argue both sides. So I would welcome your input on that. But what is the best way of establishing it up front in an organization so that mentoring happens for everybody at every step?
I think mentoring should happen day one of the person coming in, being onboarded. You don't just have, this person put in to be the welcome partner or the whatever you want to call it before you get started. Way before FTO and in the academy, you have your ambassador of the agency, the one that your recruiter. They become the mentor of these individuals coming in, and it starts at day one. And something you said, and I wanted to elaborate on. I've pounded my fist for years saying leadership should be taught in basic academies, and I don't know through your travels, is anybody doing that that you know of?
I think there are some academies that are trying to push it. Here's the problem right now. You have states that are pushing more mandates down into the basic police academy. So the number of hours that are required to be just basically certified have increased, but you have agencies that want those people out of the academy as quickly as possible so we can get some bodies on the street. And so I think we're accomplishing the numeric portion, but not necessarily the quality portion of it right there. Everything in life comes at a cost. If we want better leaders coming out of the academy, that's going to require a little bit more time in the academy. But think about how much safer that is for everybody involved once they get out of the academy, if they are in fact leaders. It bothers me. It bothers me at a very philosophical level that this profession that I love so much, that in some places we had to have laws in place that require a duty to intervene when somebody is doing something unconstitutional. And I believe that that is a result of a lack of leadership training early on in the career. There's a lot less need for laws if people are doing the right thing because of the leadership provided early on.
I have a quick observation to make about, as we're talking through this conversation, I think the other, at least another portion of it is, and it's a branch off that we can't really get into right now because I think it's probably a whole nother conversation. But how do you define success? So when we talked about if an officer is successful based on this hiring team or this thing that we're doing, and until we have a better vision of who we expect an officer to be, I think it's hard to, or maybe it is part of the conversation now. I don't know. I think it's hard to determine how these people go forward, or like what is it we want to see in agencies? What's important? The fact that we have to pass laws to tell people to intervene tells me that there is some issue
Yes.
in who we see ourselves as, who we envision ourselves to be in this profession, and what the expectations are there. And I think it's all over the board. I mean, it's been very inconsistent in my experience, in my own agency, and then looking at others and having the good fortune to talk with people from all over the nation. I mean, as all of you do, it's all over the board.
Well, I just want to throw this out there. Emerson Hour this past year at ILEETA, what probably the most impactful quote that I have heard in all of the Emerson Hours that I've ever gone to: loyalty isn't always about protecting people from consequences. Sometimes loyalty is about protecting the people from themselves. And that to me is exactly what leadership is about, especially when stress levels are high and the bad things are starting to happen. My loyalty to you is sometimes me protecting you from you. And so let's go to the intervention piece right there. Okay. I think it's unreasonable for formal leaders to expect someone to intervene in a cell block or intervene on the road if they themselves are unwilling to intervene internally. If they allow bad behavior to go on, if they say, oh, you know what, that's just Mike, and they know that something is going sideways with Mike, if you're unwilling to intervene there, why should you expect me to intervene when I'm fighting with somebody on the side of the road and literally my life is at stake? I just think, and you know what? If we never train on intervention, we write these great policies, we write these laws, but what does it look like in practice? If we're not incorporating into our simulations or into our reality-based training, we're probably not going to get it right under those stressful situations.
100%. And there's a congruity issue too that you just hit on, where if we're unable to intervene in situations that are maybe less immediately impactful, when we see somebody's having a bad day, or they seem to not be who they were a week before, and having a hard time that way. And yes, I'm getting into wellness issues now, which interleave with all the rest of the stuff we're talking about, because if we're not showing people how to have those uncomfortable conversations and make those approaches, how do we expect them to jump in and like save the day when somebody is doing something unlawful, right?
Yes. It's one of those things where if a leader doesn't address the initial issue, then they lose that opportunity to make a bigger difference. They talk about, we were talking about retirement investment a little bit before we got on. The best investments made for retirement are made when you first start, because of the power of compound interest. And it's the same thing with intervention. Intervention is best done early, because that bad thing will also compound in interest, and it becomes much more difficult and much less effective the further along that pathway that we go. But from a leadership perspective, that requires us to be willing to be intervened on. And again, that's the whole vulnerability part right there. And if we aren't going to do that, then it's unreasonable to expect anybody else to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I'm sorry, I've got one follow-up. I'm just kind of, like
You're good.
taking
You're good.
So what do you say to the people who might be listening or listening to a conversation like this who are like, well, that just means you're going to be nitpicking every single thing I do and telling me all the stuff I do wrong?
Okay.
Right?
How about the old phrase, inspect what you expect? And
Okay.
I live by that for a long time. And it kind of comes from Ronald Reagan's things, trust but verify. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think that what sets it apart is what is the leader's intention or what are their expectations that they're going to find? Because if my expectation is that I'm going to go out there and find people doing things wrong, then what am I going to find? I'm going to find people doing things wrong. If, however, I'm inspecting what I expect to find people doing things right. And it will be anomalous then when I find people that maybe aren't living up to the standards. And then I can address that as a way to improve. Rather, if you're looking for the gotcha, the saying in law enforcement is if you follow somebody long enough, you follow them for a couple miles, you're going to find them committing a traffic violation. And I will just speak from my experience. I won't throw anybody else under the bus. If you follow Michael Warren around long enough during my career, you're probably going to find a policy violation. But that's not what the leader should be striving for. And so it goes back to Simon Sinek's why. What's your why for these activities? And the why drives it correctly. And it changes the entire context, the entire tone of those interactions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I had to
think
follow
it-
up question, I lost it, but man, so much to unpack there. But I think I had a conversation with a young kid in a agency full of young kids, and they have an accountability problem. And it's a culture issue, I guess, in that agency, and they want to change some things, but there's a lot of fear. They want to say, Michael, I appreciate you doing this, but I think you could do this or that better. And there's this fear of retaliation and punishment in this agency with all these young kids. But it's this one kid stepping up to be the leader, and he's getting pushback. So I'm being vague because I don't want to bash because I know the kid is watching, and I don't want him to get in trouble. But how do we communicate amongst our staff, especially with younger generations, that it is okay to coach others without fear of punishment or retaliation from the management and then or leadership, and then get the leadership to buy into that?
I think the ideal world is where problems are addressed before they have to become formalized and they become part of the disciplinary process. There are mistakes of the head and mistakes of the heart. The ones that we have to be concerned about are the mistakes of the heart, those intentional things. And so just throw this in there. I think one of the things that leaders can really do for trainers to help them with this is that in most organization, if something goes wrong and there's some discipline issues, part of the problem or part of the solution, if you will, is that, hey, you're going to get a couple days off and you're going to have to go to this training. Okay. I believe that it's really important for leaders to let the trainers know why they're there, because I can't properly address it. But I think it's also important for me to know, is this a matter of they can't do it or they won't do it? Because can't do it means they don't have the requisite skills, knowledge, and ability to go about and accomplish that task. Okay, that we can fix with training, but a refusal to do that which they can do is an administrative issue. And I recognize that a lot of times that human HR folks they require training as part of it, and we got to go through it. But I don't want to bang my head against the wall as a trainer trying to fix this person right here when they have already stated that they're not going to do that. And so for the young person you're talking about, number one, the right thing is always the right thing to do. And that doesn't mean it's the easy thing to do. And I'm not a big CYA kind of guy, but in our society today, where it seems like when I came on the job, that if something went sideways, the the court that handled it was civil court. That was the default court. It seems like there's been a shift now to criminal court. I love you, but I'm not going to jail for you. I love you. I'll take a bullet for you, but I'm not going to jail for you. And understanding that I can't remember, Heffernan, I think was her last name, wrote a book called Willful Blindness. Willful blindness is something you cannot, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is dangerous. Ignorance gets us killed. It gets us hurt. It gets us successfully sued. And so we have to be proactive. And again, the why behind it. I do this not because I don't like you. I do this because I love you. And so the last thing I'll say before we go on, my good friend Victor Lauria, who was presented at ILEETA, he talks about how he was the first guy that I ever felt comfortable when they told me I love you. Okay. The first time he told me I love you, I was kind of like Major Pain, kind of makes me feel funny inside. Right. But if we don't truly love the people that we're training and we're leading, are we truly effective? Because I get worried when I go into organizations. I hear people say, man, I hate people. I hate people. And that's bad enough on the front line, but it's really bad when we're talking about supervisors and trainers, because this is a people mission. And I get to speak at a lot of chief conferences. And I tell chiefs, I tell sheriffs, if you have an issue in your agency with how your people are handling the public that they deal with, whether it be on the street or whether it be in a cell block, I can almost guarantee you that you have a problem with the way that they're handled internally. Our people handle others as a direct reflection of how we're handled. And so if we start with that premise right there as a leader, it completely changes the complexion of rooting out the cause. And when we go into it with that, I think we get much better results, and people are much more willing to step up like your young friend is, to be the leader that's needed in that organization.
I think he's going to be a good fit for that organization, or wherever he lands. It's a small organization, and I'm sure he appreciates that comment there, Michael. He just texted me and said, thanks for asking that. So.
Hey, and folks, you can feel free to share my email. I'm a pretty safe guy, being retired, not a mandatory reporter or anything anymore. I'm a pretty safe guy, and I'm always willing to talk to people because I love this profession. I think these are some of the best folks in the entire world. So feel free to share my contact information with them.
Michael, one of the things I want to ask you is, as the leader of Command Presence, where do you see Command Presence going into the future? Where do you see them a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Where do you see Command Presence at? And where is Command Presence going to continue to make a difference?
Well, I am so blessed in my job right now. The folks that we have that teach for us are I'd put them up against anybody. I mean, they're so good. But one of the things that we've done over the past couple of years, it kind of the same thing ILEETA's doing. We're really trying to get a lot heavier on the correction side of things, because our corrections folks are, in my opinion, some of the most undertrained professionals in our domain. And yet they go out there, they deploy every day. As I had one corrections officer say, hey, listen, road guys, sometimes they have to go to the bad neighborhood. In corrections, we live in the bad neighborhood. And yet they're so undertrained. So that's one thing right there. Talking about the wellness side, man, we brought on board a couple people, Jessica Martin, police officer, licensed counselor, carries a practice. She ran a co-responder program, and she is so passionate. Energy like you wouldn't believe, because you know what? Wellness doesn't have to be a downer. But what wellness is something we should be excited about. You know what I'm saying? And yet we go, oh, here we go again. Another wellness class, It's like, oh, woe is me. Yeah, no. It's so she's like that. We brought on board another guy, Jeff Manzer, who's working down in Texas, and he's getting to do he kind of got this blank check where he kind of gets to do into the basic academy, because just like leadership should be taught at the basic academy, so should wellness. Hey, you know what? You don't have to go through that starter marriage. Hey, you know what? You don't have to develop these unhealthy habits when it comes to sleep and eating and alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. So we want to get on that, because honestly, if we get that stuff right there, it makes all the other stuff a lot easier. We have obviously our leadership side. We've got our officer safety side, but we've developed a partnership with a group called Strategic Communications. And that's one of the things that is allowing us to expand our leadership offering in a way that, quite honestly, a couple years ago, I probably wouldn't have envisioned. They are such incredible supporters of the public safety profession, and they ponied up money so that people can afford to come to these things right here, because I want senior leaders to be excited about leadership, because that's contagious. And if they start changing their little world, now you got middle management that's starting to get excited about leadership. And then we go down to the front lines. Man, if we get people excited about that, in our Leading Without Rank class, I often would get people say, you know what, Mike, all this stuff you've talked about today, it sounds really good, but the truth of the matter is I'm probably not going to change the world. And you know what? They're right. Most people don't get the opportunity to change the world. It's very few people get the opportunity to change the entire world. But one thing I am absolutely convinced of is that each and every one of us can change our world. And if we have a whole bunch of people out there that are changing their worlds, man, what can we build with that? I think we can build something really good. So if you ask what I see Command Presence being positioned at, I'm hoping it as one of the leaders that has created a whole bunch of these little pods where people are getting healthy and they're getting excited about being leaders, and they're getting excited again about this profession right there. And they're recognizing that being a public servant doesn't mean you're less than. It's honorable to be a public servant. And that's where I see us. If we can position ourselves there where we can help others to lead and commit and contribute to their societies, I think we're all better off.
That's exciting stuff. It's good to hear.
So, just curious, out of everybody that has changed your world, who's changed Michael Warren's world, that made you to the leader, the mentor, the trainer that you are today, who do you think most of when you're training, mentoring others, and what did they get right that you're still trying to pass on to others?
I mentioned him in a lot of our classes, and it's a guy named Tom Orlowski. Tom Orlowski was actually senior to me when I got hired in. We became police officers together. We were trainers together. Eventually, I got promoted, and I was one of his bosses in the training unit. And I will never forget him walking into my office one day, and he threw a book on my desk. He said, "Mike, you need to read this book." I said, "Tom, I ain't got time to read that book." He goes, "Mike, I'm telling you, you need to read this book. It's going to fundamentally change the way that we train." I was like, "Tom, I ain't got time for it." And he goes, "Mike, you need to read it." And it happened to be Training at the Speed of Light by Ken Murray. And so the beautiful thing about it was Tom not only brought it to me and said I needed to read it, he followed up and made sure, "Hey, Mike, have you read the book yet?" And finally, it just got to the point, well, son of a gun, I'm going to read this book just so you shut up. But you know what? It fundamentally changed the way that I looked at things. And it sparked something in me in saying, I need to know more. Because if trainers and leaders don't understand how human beings make decisions, how can they possibly hope to influence the decision that their people make, especially under stress? We have to be experts. We have to be well-versed in how human beings decide to do something. It's not enough to tell them what to do. We have to help them develop those things. And so I talk about Tom all the time because I outranked him, and yet he still was leading up. He still was mentoring me. And to this day, I point back to that point in time right there and say that right there. I was already a trainer for several years, but in my mind, that's where my heart got into it, and it changed everything for us.
Is that your dog barking in the background there? I love those stories. I love kind of listening to who changed you and mentored you and what nuggets of wisdom that you can share to others that did that. And one of the things you talk about reading a book, and I've said this countless times. I don't have time to read a book. I don't have time to read. We've all said that. But to all those trainers that don't have time, how do we encourage them to read and go seek the knowledge that they need to be a better trainer?
One of the baddest human beings that has ever lived on the face of the earth, General James Mattis, says that if you have not read literally hundreds of books, then you are functionally illiterate because your experience alone is not enough to sustain you. And so if there's a dude that could have said he ain't got time to read, it would have been him. But there's another quote that I read that said, if there's somebody who has written more than he has read, you need to be careful about what he's saying, because we should be reading a lot more, taking in a lot more information than we're putting out there. So again, just about every single public library has an app. My public library is Libby. You can go check it out for free. It's right in your budget. That's right in your price range right there. And listen, dork meter right here, right? When I listen to a book, I'm tabbing it, I'm putting the stuff down, and I go back and I type the notes and I put it out to my instructors, because they're going to get a 10 to 11 page book summary on it, because maybe they'll like the book. Maybe it resonates with them and they'll go and they'll try to find other things. Or maybe they'll say, you know what, that one's not for me. But you can speed up those books too. I start off listening to books at about 1.2 speed just to get used to the person who's reading it. And then by the time I'm done, I'm usually at about 1.7. And it allows me to get through more material. But if you're unwilling to read a book, read a blog. Read the ILEETA journal. Go and read some of the, our good buddy Kevin Davis. It's like he's going down memory lane this week, posting some of these previous articles that he's written. Go and read that stuff. Sign up for newsletters. For Science. James Clear, one of my favorite authors, Atomic Habits, puts out a weekly blog. It is so short, and get used to it. Get used to taking in and looking for information and finding ways that we can apply it. Not everything's going to work. Not everything's going to resonate, but you're going to find something that does.
And I want to thank you for sending me that book that you just mentioned earlier.
That is such a great book. Probably one of the best maybe the best leadership book that I've read in the past 10 years. Call Sign Chaos, General James Mattis's autobiography right there.
Everybody get that on your Amazon wish list there.
And the fact of the matter is, we've all got time. It's what we choose to use that time for, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We could either read or we could continue to doom scroll, right?
Yes.
And whether you're reading paper, or you're reading words on a screen, or you're listening to an audiobook when you're driving to and from work, while you're driving around on patrol, while you're traveling, there's all sorts of opportunities that we can take. It's just what we choose to use that time for. So,
Todd, one of the best things about ILEETA is that it doesn't have to be a book either. How about we sit around out in the grand hall that's sitting behind our buddy Brian right there, and we have these discussions with other trainers that are subject matter experts, and we continue those relationships throughout the year. Joe Willis said, well, every time I talk to that guy, I feel like I need to turn my recorder on, because he's so stinking smart and he has a magnificent beard. And but he's so smart. But it doesn't require hours and hours of investment. It's just that spurring of a thought sometimes that is enough to get things started.
Yeah, and you can see behind Brian, Tim Janowick holding court back there.
Yeah, yes.
So
I will be here all week. Please stop by and see me. So.
Brian Willis said something that resonated with me years ago, and I don't remember the actual numbers, but 10 pages in a book a day equivalent to several books at the end of the year. So just 10 pages a day, and
What you know what? One of the best things a former boss told me, you have to be able to identify the difference between an expense and an investment. You know, monetarily, they're both the same. Time-wise, they may be both the same. But if we start looking at these as investments, then again, it changes our perspective going into it.
Yeah.
100%.
You used an analogy earlier, another financial analogy on compound interest, right?
Yep.
And knowledge is a lot like money. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. Right?
Yes.
And then it goes goes a little further than a money analogy, because it's not just what you keep to yourself, but it's what you share with others, which kind of brings us all the way back around to the mentoring, to the legacy bit that we started the conversation talking about.
Well, Todd, here's a question I've started asking in my classes over the past year. Are your people successful because of the leadership and or training you're providing, or in spite of it? And when you talk about vulnerability right there, honestly answering that question is I think one of the best ways of establishing a legacy. If I want my people to succeed because of what I'm doing, then that's going to require mentoring. It's going to require coaching. It's going to require subject matter expertise. And a lot of times we take credit for successes that aren't our own. And I'm not talking about getting up and saying, I did this, I did that. But when I look over and I see one of my people did something good, so yeah, that they're mine. You know, yeah, but it had nothing to do with you. And so that one's one of the things that's been challenging me. And Mikey's going to be vulnerable here for a second. The older I get, the more get off my lawn moments I have. You know, there's a lot more of those things going on, right? And so this came about through some discussions with my mom, and it's something I have to ask myself often, especially when we talk about the younger folks, right? Because they do things differently. They think differently. Their experiences are different. And I think as leaders and trainers, when we're talking about legacy, we need to ask ourselves, is what they're doing, is it right? Is it wrong? Or is it just different? Because a lot of us identify legacy as a bunch of people that look and think and act like us that are following us up the organization. When what legacy is really about is the people that are coming up behind us being better than what we are. You know, I think that leadership and training is most closely related to parenting. We all want better for our kids. That doesn't necessarily mean more money. What it means is better people and better skills and better tools. And I think that's what legacy is all about, but it's almost impossible if it's not started at the beginning of the career and it's regularly, intentionally nurtured by trainers and leaders. Intentionally, I cannot say that word enough, intentionally to make them better, not like us, to make them better.
I love it.
No, absolutely. You know, I think a mentor to me, we had a mentoring program in my agency, and every year you get a different mentor. And it may be somebody in law enforcement, maybe a civilian staff, but I think that is so valuable that some people want the same mentor throughout their entire career. You're not getting different aspects of a civilian perspective on leadership, or may want to be a mentor. I started mentoring some folks, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. I've been doing it. And some of those people aren't even in law enforcement, and they're learning a lot about our job. So I think those of us on this call here are willing to help anybody that is just coming into the profession. And if anybody is looking for a mentor, a coach, or somebody to help guide them, contact Joe, contact Todd, myself. I think every single one of us will bend over backwards to help you, or find you a mentor or a coach to help you become a much better officer, leader, and trainer.
Absolutely. And you know, there have been times where I've gone to the doctor, and one of the most powerful things a doctor can say to me is, hey, listen, I'm not the right doctor for you. I need you to send you to somebody else. Sometimes we have to recognize we're not the right mentor for somebody. As much as we want to help somebody else, we know people who could do a better job. And that also requires us to be vulnerable, because as much as I'd like to help you, I'm not qualified to do that for you, but here's somebody who can.
I think that's the power of associations like ILEETA too, is just the networking. And I'm not a super social person. All of my friends will tell you that. However, the connections that you make with other people in organizations like ILEETA I've it's been amazing over the years. And I know that all of you on this call have experienced that. And I'm hoping that our new members, as well as our, our members who've been with us for a while, keep experiencing that. And that's how you build up your network of mentors and coaches and people who can help you out.
Yes. Listen, as good as the classes are, oftentimes the most important learning and the longest lasting learning takes place sitting at the little table like Tim is back there.
Absolutely.
Not dressed as well as he is, but sitting like he is.
Never.
Hey, we got just a couple more minutes, and I just want to go around the horn. Todd, any final thoughts, comments, questions for Michael?
Yeah. So when it comes to legacy, when it comes to mentoring, when it comes to that culture of leadership within our departments, give us one or two actionable items that we can take forward and immediately start focusing on. What's some guidance that you can give us to put this conversation into action?
Okay, we touched on it a little bit earlier. One of the most important things I think that we can do is establish what success looks like. I like asking the question in class on the correction side. Give me a skill that every corrections officer should be able to do, and they'll come up with something like a cell search. Okay, well, tell me in terms of actions what separates an acceptable one from an exceptional one. Because if you as the leader or you as the trainer cannot do that for me, you know who else can't? Your people can't. So we have to establish it. So Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. Too many leaders use arbitrary time frames, arbitrary metrics to establish success. And that's not what success is about right here. So early on, establish what exceptional looks like, because I believe that most people come in here into our profession wanting to be exceptional, not mediocre. They become mediocre because they don't know what exceptional looks like.
I love it.
Sasha?
I'm going to go with an observation that based on our conversation tonight, I took away that you don't ever know when you're going to be the inspiration. And your story about your peer, who I'm sure he didn't suggest that book to you because he thought it was going to change your life, but it did, right? Yes. And you never know when you can be that person for somebody else. So in this idea of changing culture and leaving legacy, and Brian, the young man you were talking about, having those uncomfortable conversations and doing what you know is right, you never know when you might be somebody's inspiration. You may never find out. So you just got to have faith that you're doing the right thing and keep pushing forward. And I just, all the different components, Michael, of what you said tonight, I think kind of go to that. So thank you for bringing all that together.
Can I just add one thing to it? Because you're dead on. I also don't think that a lot of times we recognize how long lasting that impact is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're talking about years down the road. You're still having an impact. You could have been gone from your agency for years, yet you're still impacting the decisions that they're making at work today.
Yeah, that's wild.
Final question. What is one book you recommend all leaders read that we haven't discussed tonight?
I believe the book, I just read it. I haven't finished the book notes on it, but I believe the name of it was The Art of Clear Thinking. It was written by a former military pilot. Thinking clearly is a skill. It's something that must be worked upon. It must be developed in ourselves, and it must be developed in others. and there are ways we can do it. We just don't take the time and invest in it.
Thank you, Michael. Jason Durr says extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership. That's one I recommend that you listen to. Getting to listen to Jocko and Leif Babin talk about it. Fantastic book.
All right, we come to the conclusion. I want to give you your last words of wisdom, nuggets of wisdom for everybody out there that's watching.
I think that one of the most valuable things that a trainer, a leader, a mentor, a coach can bring, especially to someone's new, is the future face. I think a lot of times that if we can take the time to know what that person is capable of 10 years from now, they don't know it. And if we can show them that which is possible and then show them the pathway to get there, that's where we start to really leave a legacy in our organizations.
Legacy. You got to start today to build that legacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much. This was a powerful, thoughtful conversation. Wish we had more time, but you added a lot of nuggets of wisdom and insight tonight. So,
well, thank you so much for having me.
We had a great conversation. Looking forward to our conversation next month.
Yeah.